The town selects the consultant and gives notice to the bondholders through the trustee that a facilities consultant has been engaged.
Okay. So the town,
So
we would get to select somebody and that they would then get approved by the bond
the
council.
bondholders, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
correct.
Makes sense. Thanks, Luke. I got one question. Before we vote tonight on the ordinance, what bond terms will be finalized after tonight's vote specifically? And if it is approved, how does this ordinance make sure that those terms stay within what the board would approve if it's approved?
Yes, so the ordinance lays out certain parameters that we won't go beyond in terms of the actual terms of the bonds. And that is the final maturity of these bonds will not exceed 40 years. We use it 40 years because that's the statutory maximum under state law. The total amount of bonds, the par amount of bonds, will not exceed 225 million. Again, that's just a number that the underwriters came up with that they felt would give us plenty of cushion here in terms of the actual amount of bonds that they envision issuing. And then a interest rate not to exceed 9%. Again, these are all on the high side, but those are the guardrails, if you will, that you're proceeding to proceed with an issuance so long as we fall within those parameters. The actual terms of the bonds will be determined by you, Mr. Mayor, and the Mayor Pro Tem after the underwriters go into the market and market and price the bonds. They will come back to the two of you as the formal sale delegates under the ordinance and say, we have offers for this amount of bonds at these interest rates, maturing on these dates. Are these acceptable to you? And you don't have a deal. You're not agreeing to borrow the money until the two of you grant the award to the underwriters. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying.
You bet.
Any other clarifying questions for Casey or John or Jennifer? Thanks, everybody. We're going to open the floor for public comment. Just state your name and address. You have 3 minutes, and we're not going to respond to comments or questions. We'll just, it's being recorded. We'll take them all, and then we may be adding them to our next FAQs 5.0, so we can give you more researched and intelligent answers. So if anyone in the room, first of all. Oh, sorry. Little green light will come on.
There we go. Rick Rudstrom. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Trustees for the Nederland District Library. And I'm basically here just to ask for some help or to ask a question. As everybody knows, library land is suffering currently. Funds are drying up, grants are harder to get, state and federal, and we know we are facing a loss of revenue because of the purchase of Eldora. The property taxes that Eldora had previously paid, the library gets a portion of that. I don't know what that portion is. And we know we won't be receiving that revenue in the future, or presumably we won't. And we have been trying to find out what that number is. We need that number for our budget. We need that number for our programs that we're planning. We've got programs underway for the winter. We've got programs planned for the summer. And basically, we've been trying to obtain that number, and we reached out to the town, but we can't seem to get a number to work with. But it's becoming imperative for the library to have that number so we know how to plan for the future, particularly the summer programs that are coming up, and especially in light of the fact that grants, both federal and state, are getting harder to get and funds are becoming less available. So what I'm asking the board is, could you please provide us a number that we can work with so that we know what to expect in the future? If I have any time left on a different subject, I was going to bring this up, but now that I've heard talk about the purchase and the bonds and all that for Eldora, one thing that pops into my mind is worst case scenario. I don't know what that answer is. What if the bonds aren't paid? What if the mountain defaults on those bonds? Do the bondholders just lose their money and that's the end of it? Or, I mean, surely they have collateral. I mean, are they going to claim the mountain as theirs because they didn't get paid? I know the town doesn't have any responsibility, but surely the bondholders must have some recourse if they don't get paid, and that only recourse is the mountain. So I know you can't answer the question, and I know it's very involved because of the lengthy contract, and I don't have those details. But the first thing that occurred to me is surely the bondholders have some recourse. What if they don't get paid? What's going to happen? And again, I know you can't answer the question.
Thanks for asking them.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on the board of the library district.
I can answer a little bit of that question. One thing I can say for sure is your summer budget won't be affected by the sale of Eldora. I also don't have enough information at this time to determine any potential mill levy impacts to anyone. We don't have all the inputs yet. And part of that is I don't have your original ballot language, which is something we talked about when I came to visit you that I needed. It's not publicly available on the DOLA site or on the assessor site or on your site. So that would be helpful to us to have that so we understand your maximum mill levy. The other thing that would be helpful to know is that we do know there are forthcoming decisions by the Boulder County Assessor related to the new changes in the state property tax law. In 2024, they changed the rules so that residential assessment is going to be capped at 6.9% and commercial property is capped at 25%. And the assessor still needs to go through that process to figure out what that looks like. So there could be greater impacts on mill levies in our region just because of that. The other thing I just want to note is that there is information that's confidential related to that question that I can't answer. But I do want to say that the library district is a really important partner to the town, and we understand the questions you're raising, and we do want to work through this once we have all the information that we need.
Thanks, John. No. Macy, you want to? The little green light should pop on.
Oh, there we go. I'm Electra Greer, and I'm here as the director of the Nederland Community Library District. And I do just want to follow up. We really do appreciate, and we know the intentions are really great about the purchase. But we have requested several times to the town and to Cynthia Braddock, our Boulder County assessor. And what we heard was there are 2 questions that she has posed to the town administrator that have not been answered. So I just want them on the record. So as soon as we get that information, we can move forward. And I'm not quite sure that it's necessarily about not getting that piece of legislation because, Jonathan, when you were at our board meeting, you said you'd get it to us the next day. And you didn't bring that up as an issue. So the 2 questions are, we need to know which properties are being purchased as part of the ski area. This is from the Boulder County assessor. So these are the questions she wants answered specifically. Legal descriptions, a map or assessor account numbers, parcel numbers identifying the property. And the second question is knowledge about if the town continues to have private businesses provide concessions, equipment rental, or leasing space. The properties are valued as possessory interests doing business on government property. So we just hope as soon as possible. I know we understand the NDA and all of those things, but we do feel like we have a community responsibility. Lots of questions come our way about how we may be affected since we are obviously going to be affected by the changes in the law with property tax. Thanks.
Thanks. Actually, Electra, if you don't mind, you talk really fast. That second question, could you say that a little more clearly?
So these are emails that have been sent to the town
Okay.
from the assessor, and we're just hoping to move forward the answer. Knowledge about if the town continues to have private businesses provide concessions, equipment rental, or lease any space. The properties are valued as possessory interests doing business on government property. So those are the two things for them to give us a clear calculation, and then they said they can move forward with that.
Thank you. More questions from folks in the room on the bond ordinance? If there are none, we'll go ahead to the folks online. Any questions, folks online, if you have any questions on the bond ordinance or public comment or questions, I should say, now's the time. Don't see any hands raised. If you're talking and we don't hear you, so *6, otherwise give it another minute here. All right, well, I don't hear or see any movement towards public comment here from folks online, so we'll go ahead and thank you for everyone for sharing your perspectives. We appreciate it. Understand the concerns with the library district. Seems very reasonable, logical. We appreciate you being here tonight and continued engagement. So thank you. And we'll bring it back to the board now for discussion and a motion.
I think that for me, the discussion is, I just want to give a shout out to Casey, his firm, our bond counsel. We have disclosure counsel that's been working on this, our underwriters, RBC, B of A. This has been a long time in the working. And as you can see from, that flow of funds, we're also trying to set the future boards up for this fiscal responsibility that we need to adhere to. And so I'm really quite proud of the work that has gone into this. And so just again, like a huge shout out to all those folks, in addition to John and Jennifer, our town attorneys, because been on multiple calls to get this done. For me, this is approving the bond ordinance, and that releases those guardrails around the bond ordinance. And so with that, we'll be voting yes to get this over the line so that we can get closer and closer to making this a publicly owned mountain.
Thanks, Nicole.
Obviously, huge thanks to everybody who helped put this together. And Nicole, I think that's a great way of putting the reasoning behind this, is to keep the guardrails on for the future boards, because this is a multi-decade operation to repay these bonds, and we want to make sure that everything stays healthy. I'm curious if we all feel like this is enough, right? Like have we really done the things we need to do to ensure that that future boards are well guided and the operations of the resort are well protected, such that one of the concerns I hear a lot from the community is town doesn't know how to run this or that, and the board turns over, right? Like, regardless of how well meaning or well informed future boards may be, you know, people are only here for a handful of years in this big picture. And I would really hope that we lay down as best we can, this most super solid foundation so that as all these people turn over, that they're super clear about the impact of the responsibility and the guardrails that we put in place. I think it's really important that you know, the way that these reserve funds are set up, like they're defined by this agreement, and we're not going to change them. We're not going to take them away. So I'm feeling pretty good about the security of all this and the financial responsibility that, you know, we're putting down. So yeah, I feel good.
Yeah. To drive that, like we have an obligation. I feel like this board, the people who are sitting here today have an obligation to continue to tell the story and to reinforce the values and the obligations that we have. And John cannot retire for another 30 to 40 years. So that's how I'm solving for this. He'll be the consistency through all the boards.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, that, you know, this brings, I mean, that statement brings up, you know, as we move onwards from this step, you know, that is one of the things we'll want to think about is how do we help ensure some continuity that is independent of the board turnover. So, yeah, this is great. I'm excited to see us here and also see us here feeling like responsible.
I'll echo the thanks again. I think we can't do it enough. Thanks to John, Jennifer, Casey. Thank you so much for being here and explaining things so clearly for us. Thank you for your time tonight, for clarifying for us and for the public too, kind of how this will all work. And I feel like there's clearly been so much thought and energy put into this plan to what we do going forward. I feel confident about the ordinance as written, and I don't have much more to add than that.
The comments?
Yeah, so
I think
forgive my ignorance. I'm still catching up on all this, but what exactly is next after this? You know, like when we vote on this, then what? We're just gonna figure out those terms of the bonds and then that's it, as long as it's within that frame.
So we still have to prepare for the issuance. And so there's a lot of work that goes into that and helping the underwriters prepare to be ready to sell the bonds. And over the next few weeks, that's what they'll be doing, is preparing all the documents and making sure everything's in order. And then they will begin the work of selling those bonds. And I think as we move forward, we'll know more about exact timelines for what that will look like.
Okay.
To it too.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
there's also more work to be done related to the acquisition. We need to finalize leases for the private property where the Nordic area is on. Make sure that we have an agreement with Altera for the Icon Pass. Finalize the special use permit with the Forest Service. So all of those things are going to be going on in the background at the same time that the underwriters are working on marketing the bonds and that process.
Okay, so still quite a bit of work to do. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. Anya, Chris, any questions or comments?
No, not really. I just want to thank everybody also for all the hard work that was done to create these documents and move forward with this acquisition. I think a lot of people, you know, have reasonable hesitations, but I like all the safeguards so that I know that town assets are going to be safe and protected, even if we continue to have bad snow years, which I really hope we don't. And I know that we'll have creative people that help us along the way. should we do? Should we need them? So thanks.
Thanks, Tanya. Chris?
Just want to echo what other people have said. Incredible work by all of the town staff, our consultants, the board members, not only just to get us to this point here and, since we've started looking at these documents in the last few weeks, but over the last 18 months, we've been working on this. This is exciting. I think Luke brought up good points. This is definitely, something we got to keep an eye on and set some good guardrails on for future boards, but this is a huge step forward for the town, and I'm excited that we're moving to the next step.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I appreciate Casey going through and kind of
Just really bored.
describing the 12 pots of money, the 12 funds, and just how things are laid out pretty clearly and legally for required reserves, and clear, rules for how this will go down over time, how the money will be used, I guess more specifically over time. Even with poor years and, just thoughts we can't anticipate right now. So I appreciate you letting us know, that there will be bad years, and the way this is organized and planned, we're prepared for that. And, as you said, a lot of the numbers are high. I do know that in general, things have been very conservative on all the numbers we've talked about and all the limits, et cetera. So I feel like our consultants have done a good job of really setting us up for a lot of bad years and still succeeding. So it's exciting to see us be moving closer to Eldora becoming locally owned and a real asset for our community. So
I move to approve ordinance number 885, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Nederland, Colorado, acting by and through its Mountain Recreation Enterprise, authorizing the issuance and sale of Mountain Recreation Enterprise Revenue Bonds, Series 2026, authorizing an indenture and related agreements and certificates, pledging available Mountain Recreation Enterprise revenues for repayment, and providing other matters relating thereto.
second.
Trustee Larson,
Yes.
Trustee Maris,
Yes.
Trustee Miller,
Yes.
Trustee Jocelyn,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling,
Yes.
Trustee Corvalon,
Yes.
and Mayor Billy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion passes. We appreciate everyone's work for a long time now to get us here. So thank you all very much. With that, we will go on to our discussion items for the evening. We have two of those. One is the first one, 8.0, is the CEO Local Impact Accelerator application. Cass?
Thank you. So tonight I'm here to present on a grant opportunity. It is called the Local Impact Accelerator, and it is a funding opportunity provided by the Colorado Energy Office, with funding provided initially by the EPA. And this opportunity came about last year. We submitted a letter of intent in November 2025, which is non-binding and was just the initial step to see if we would be encouraged to apply for this. So that staff created that letter of intent, submitted it, and then staff had a meeting with CEO Colorado Energy Office staff where they asked more detailed questions about our letter of intent, and they then issued us a letter of encouragement to apply. The grant opportunity started with us submitting 3 different budgets, a constrained, a standard, and a vision budget. They encouraged us to apply with the standard and vision budgets. So if we were to be awarded this grant, we would be awarded either the standard or the vision. And tonight I just want to go over some of the options that we have in both of those budgets and get direction from you all on whether or not you would like us to apply for this in February, or if we should change the application and the items in the budgets. There's not a ton of wiggle room just because we did have that meeting already with them, but there is room to adjust things. And we also talked with the Sustainability Advisory Board and Planning Commission before submitting that letter of intent, and looked at the comprehensive plan and other plans to make sure that these are things that aligned with what Nederland has already been talking about doing. And we plan to also go back to SAB and Planning Commission after this discussion with you all, and then before bringing this back to you if you do recommend that we draft a full application. So just to start with the standard budget, we are focusing on becoming an ADU supportive jurisdiction. So Nederland is a subject jurisdiction under House Bill 241152, meaning that we do have to meet certain requirements that the state has made requirements for the supportive jurisdictions. But there are additional things that we can do in order to go above and beyond that code. And that is something that the grant would be funding, would be things that go above and beyond what is required by the state. So one of the things in the comprehensive plan that is a strategy that aligns with becoming an ADU supportive jurisdiction is developing a booklet of pre-approved residential designs. Something that we can do to become an ADU supportive jurisdiction is create pre-approved plans and provide those to residents. And that is something that would meet their supportive strategies. And then there's also in our housing section of the comprehensive plan strategy to amend the code to permit more than one ADU per property, provided that the property continues to meet all applicable yard and bulk standards. So with that strategy, that would be going beyond what the supportive jurisdiction requires for compliance. The other aspect of the policy side of things is an EV first procurement policy. So this would require that the town consider EVs or alternative fuel vehicles when looking to switch our government fleet vehicles over. So when our vehicles reach the end of life, we would look at first trying to acquire an EV or a hybrid or some kind of alternative fuel vehicle before immediately going to a gas-powered vehicle. So this policy would basically identify what that replacement cycle and timeframe would be. And also we would look at what types of models are available. Like if there's not an electric vehicle that could replace a plow, then we wouldn't buy that, obviously, because it doesn't exist or because it's way out of our price range. So that is something we need to consider if we were to create this type of EV first procurement policy. And that aligns with Comprehensive Plan Strategy 10, which is EV Fleet Transition Strategy. So in order to unlock funding for projects with this grant, we do need to complete one of the policies that we outlined. So if we wanted to go ahead with applying for projects, we have to be reasonably sure that we would actually implement these policies that we just talked about. And then they would grant us funding to do different projects within their categories. So that's something that's pretty important to consider. Just know that, like, if we don't actually end up following through with those policies, then we're not going to get any funding for the projects. So in terms of the projects that we did identify as being either supportive of those policies or things that fall within their categories of the grant. The first one is developing pre-approved plans for ADU construction. So I already kind of explained that one. And then the other one is providing financial assistance to residents who are trying to construct ADUs. And this aligns with Housing Strategy 5, decreasing development review fees, impact fees, and associated development fees. So by providing this financial assistance, it would help overcome some of the barriers for people looking to build ADUs. This is likely something that we would only provide for the duration that we have this grant award. We would not be able to likely provide financial assistance indefinitely, but we could at least set up a short-term financial assistance program. In terms of other projects that do not necessarily involve ADUs, but are things that fall within their categories and are things that you can find in our comprehensive plan and multimodal plan, are different transportation planning projects. So with these projects, they wouldn't be providing any funding for the construction, but we have been identifying different grants, such as with the DOT and CDOT, that basically would fund construction, but you need to have shovel-ready designs, and we don't have shovel-ready designs for everything that we want to do. So something that this grant could provide is funding to do those planning projects. And then we could have those designs ready for other grants when they do show up. So one of the main transportation projects that aligned with the grant categories was coming up with basically a plan of trail and sidewalk connections that would connect Nederland schools. So basically making it safer for students and parents to get to and from the Nederland schools. And 5 miles is just kind of an estimate right now. It's not required, but it was put in there just for coming up with a budget number. And then the other one being a secondary bridge for pedestrian use, bicyclists, and emergency access. So this one is something that we've talked a lot about with the community, and we don't have a shovel-ready design, and there also needs to be a lot of community engagement too in order to get there and decide where a secondary bridge should be placed. So this grant could provide funding to get that process going with a consultant. So that is the standard budget. Again, we can change things around if you recommend. The vision budget adds on a few different things in the ADU and transportation areas. So the first one being an ADU technical assistance program. This is to provide education and assistance to homeowners if they are wishing to construct or convert an ADU. This is something where we would be hiring a consultant. The community planner does not have time to sit down and provide that technical assistance one-on-one with people. And so this could provide residents with an alternate option for figuring out how to construct an ADU on their property. That again would be similar to the financial assistance program, where it would be offered for a limited amount of time until funding runs out. We could also make it income qualified, so you have to be within a certain income range in order to qualify for this technical assistance. Those are different things that we can pursue when writing this grant application. In terms of the transportation planning, we also added on bus stop upgrades to make bus stops ADA compliant, have shelters, have improved access for pedestrians and transit vehicles to pull into and to cross the street to get there and make things safer. And this is something that was in our multimodal plan and comprehensive plan as well. And then the final transportation project for the vision budget would be an EV transition analysis of replacing municipal fleet vehicles. And essentially this would go beyond a EV first procurement policy. And this would be us hiring a consultant, someone with expertise in EVs and what types of EVs are available and the financial assistance that is available for them, and coming up with an actual plan for us to transition to EVs that's more in depth than something that like a resolution or ordinance would have. So for alternatives to these budgets, we could pursue just ADU related policies and projects to keep things simple. You could decide to take out any of the transportation planning projects or EV transition projects and policy if that just doesn't seem like something you want to pursue right now. And it also cuts down on the number of things that we're applying for, which makes it a little bit easier for staff to handle in terms of capacity and time. But again, for most of these, we would be hiring consultants to do a lot of the work for us. So staff time would be mostly logistics and making sure that things are being brought before the board and doing enough community engagement as well. You also have the option to just remove certain policies and projects that you do not want to recommend from this list. And finally, you can choose to not apply. And the the application is due February 18th. So we will be bringing this before you again if you choose to recommend us to apply or to draft an application. So before we apply, you can always choose then not to apply. In terms of financial considerations, there's a 5% match for applicants, and half of it can be in-kind staff time. We did submit in our letter of intent a request for a 0% match, which we basically are declaring financial hardship in terms of being a smaller community, not having the resources of most of the larger municipalities in Colorado who are applying for this grant, and especially with the high award that they are issuing. And we have not received a decision on whether or not that 5% is waived. The other option that I think I might have forgot to put in here, but the other option is essentially if we dedicate half of our funding to low-income households in the lower than 40 to 60% AMI range, then we would be able to qualify for 0% match. And so that would come in the form of doing things like having our ADU financial assistance program be reserved for low-income residents, and same with the pre-approved design. So it would be restricting some of those resources for people who demonstrate that they have financial hardship. So that is another option for us to receive a 0% match requirement. I trust that there are other things in here that you've already read through, but those were the main things that pertain to this conversation tonight. CEO did give us some guidance after our meeting with them, and a lot of that has been incorporated into these standard and vision budgets that I presented to you. But some of the main feedback that they provided was that in order to have a strong application, we do need to include the ADU supportive jurisdiction component. Applying with just an EV first fleet procurement policy would not be enough, would not be a strong enough application in their opinion. So the ADU supportive jurisdiction policy would be kind of pushing this forward for them. And also, if we are to propose an EV first procurement policy, ideally, they want us to require the purchase of EVs, not just prioritize the purchase of EVs. So that is something to consider, especially with the fact that EVs are quite a bit more expensive and less accessible, and there's less of them on the market, and just lots of different factors there, including charging infrastructure. So that could be a barrier for us for even purchasing EVs. So that is something to keep in mind with their recommendation. And the next steps would be to decide on whether or not we should move forward with this application. And then we can meet with our regional coordinator who is connected with Colorado Energy Office and can provide some more advice and review our application. We can also meet with the Sustainability Advisory Board and Planning Commission to talk more about the details of this. And then ideally bring this back to you in February, either February 3rd or the 17th. My guess is that the 17th would be, give us more ample time to draft the full application, but also would then only give you one opportunity to review this for as an action item. So that is also something to consider. And tonight, I am recommending that we do move forward with drafting this full application. And I'm hoping that you can provide some direction on the different budgets and what the town is, what you all are kind of willing to pursue in terms of policy and projects. And also any advice you might have for Planning Commission and the SAB to review and prepare the materials that will be brought before you again in February. So I have a few questions here. What direction does the board give staff regarding drafting a full application for the local impact accelerator? Is the board comfortable committing to pursuing the policies and projects listed in each budget level? Are there policies or projects the board would like to remove? And what direction does the board give Planning Commission and SAB when discussing the contents of the final application? John, is there anything that you would want to add to that?
No, thank you, Kath.
Thanks, Cass. Good job. You guys have, the trustees, any questions? Clarifying questions for Cass?
Yeah, I got a couple. So you said if we don't complete these, we don't get the funding. What's our timeline? How long do we have to complete?
To complete the policies?
Yeah.
I don't believe that they gave us a set timeline, like you have to complete them within a year or anything. But they did in the letter of intent ask for basically milestones that we're planning to achieve in order to show that we are making progress towards that policy. And so I would like to get further clarification from them on that. But I would say it's okay. I would say that it's probably not a set timeline of you have to do this within a year, you don't get funding.
Right.
It's probably more like if 2 years have gone by and the policy hasn't been implemented, there might be a change of direction and funding.
Usually these grants, Cass is right, and usually it'll be spelled out in the contracting phase of what they're expecting.
Because it would seem like especially the EV procurement, like that's happening as vehicles reach end of life. That could be, a multi-year process, that's just sort of ongoing. So, which is leads to my second question is, if the EV procurement is just maybe a little bit more than we feel like we can bite off, can we substitute that for something else in order to still have a good, strong application? I mean, if we include the, like you said, the trails and sidewalks, the ADU financial assistance, like, do we have to have the EV procurement policy in there?
We definitely do not have to have the EV first procurement policy in there. We can also move that to the vision budget instead of the standard budget if we're thinking that it's more likely the standard budget will be more competitive for us. It's kind of hard because they provided some feedback, but they couldn't give us, this is how you should draft your application in order for us to award you. So I would say that it's a little bit of being strategic. And I think that with the EV first procurement policy, the other aspect is that if we were to hire a consultant to draft that and get that pushed forward, we would receive the funding for that. We wouldn't have to return the funding. But if we ultimately did not go forward with that policy, if you did not approve it as a board, then that might jeopardize funding for projects. And again, that would be put in the contract, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, to just, looking at all of these goals, I would prioritize the bus stop upgrades over the EV stuff personally, but overall, I think it looks great.
Yeah, so is there any obligation, I guess this would come to light later down the line, that you have to take the recommendations of the consultant of what should be replaced in your procurement plan?
No,
Yeah,
you're the Board of Trustees. So what would
Yeah.
happen is if we hired a consultant for this, there would be an engagement process and that work would happen. And they'd be reviewing our plans and documents, and then they'd make a recommendation. We'd basically make a recommendation to you, and then you could choose to adopt it. But one of the things Cass said that I think is important for us is there is context here. We've been in a constrained position in our general fund as one, and so we can't necessarily buy a new Ford Lightning every time we need a new truck. So like building some contextual policy is going to be really important. And I think that's something that we would look to the board for in terms of strategic direction on how we do that. But that would be, it would basically be, you would be involved in that process.
Right, and it's different buying like a Chevy Bolt than like an electric excavator.
Yeah, right. And that's something we've talked about, and we did mention that on the call with them. One thing about this is a really great grant opportunity. You can see the breadth and scale that we can accomplish with it, which is really great for Nederland. There are grant requirements for this as well, and that's really, you know, Kat's talked about that in her staff report, but that's something that we have been thinking about at the staff level is capacity to manage this program as we move forward and the scale of it. And so that is one of the big questions that we've been kind of just working through.
One last thing on the EV. You know, it's perhaps easier for us to pass something that's like, you know, any people mover that we purchase in the future that's just for moving people. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Like, I feel like that's affordable and approachable by us. So maybe worth the procurement if we strategize that maybe a little bit better.
And I want to note that like we can always pursue an EV first procurement policy as a town outside of this grant if we think that there are things that we want to consider as being the town of Ned that like the CEO might not really resonate with, being that they're looking at the entire state in a bigger picture. Like us as a small town, we have different things going on. We have different kind of character that we want to preserve as well. And I think that's just important to note that we can always do something like that outside of it if we think that CEO would put too many constraints on us.
Just real quick, we lost visibility
Oh.
on the computer. Not sure if that's just to move the mouse kind of a thing.
We can see you online.
Can you? Thank you, Brett.
Yes. You're welcome.
We can't see you. You're just a voice.
Voice in the dark.
We're bringing you guys back up. TVs get tired. This is true.
While we're waiting, can you guys hear me? This is Britt. No, I don't think they can hear us in the room, Chris.
I was gonna say, can still hear you online, Britt.
Okay, I think they froze.
Yeah, they don't seem to be moving very much, do they?
No. Well, it's okay.
Did you let them know, Britt? I'm guessing they already do, but
Yeah, I let
oh,
Macy know. She said everything's black there.
okay. Yeah, I just noticed, we seem to have lost Tanya as well.
Yeah.
We still have Billy and Nicole, and Jonathan just joined again, but I'm guessing they have their speakers off, so they can't tell that we're still here.
Yep. Yeah. Macy said she was surprised the meeting's still connected because everything has blacked out. So my guess
Awesome.
is they'll be up soon, hopefully.
All righty then. Or we could just make all of the decisions in lieu of the rest of the board, right?
Exactly. I've spent a lot of time on this too.
Just ask if they can hear us online. Can you hear us online?
You're
can hear ya.
back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's due to the various issues that we've been having, but we did seem to lose Trustee Corvalin during all this as well.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your patience out there. We can see you now. More questions for Cass? and Georgiana?
Billy,
I
can you
think
hear?
Nicole-
Can you guys hear us from online again now?
Yes, you
Okay.
sound clear.
All right. We were talking for a bit, and I don't think you guys could hear us, even though the camera had come back.
Well, I did hear you talking, but we were just trying to
Okay.
focus on getting you back, but we're looking good now. Go ahead.
I think Nicole asked a question that I hadn't gotten a chance to answer yet. So it was asking that if the secondary bridge was just for pedestrian bicycle emergency access and not two-way traffic. And yes, in here, we put it for pedestrian bicyclists emergency access because the impact accelerator grant is specifically for multimodal and making pedestrian and bicycle access better. The primary goal of the grant is to cut down on carbon emissions. And so they're not funding necessarily just bridges for cars to cross. So if that is something that is that the Board of Trustees would like to take out of this application because you want to have that flexibility or you want to focus on the car crossing, then that's definitely something we can do.
Thanks for clarifying.
It seems like the real winner here would be to get a multi-use path between Old Town and the high school. That would be, like, in terms of impact, that would be huge.
Are there restraints with the emergency access, meaning is this gonna hold the weight of a water tender that weighs 30 tons, or is it gonna be like a command car or something like that.
Which is part of why the discussion early on with other boards was, why don't we just make it a two-way traffic if it's gonna have to be able to carry some of these very, very heavy,
Right.
yeah.
And I'm
vehicles.
curious, I guess, if like there's restrictions on that. Because I just want to be clear with expectations of what
It's
it's
a-
performing.
It would be community driven. We get to
Okay,
determine.
okay. So we could say we want water trucks
Yeah.
on it.
It is one of the things to think about in terms of the capacity question that I'd raised. There's a lot of, as you see, there's a lot of scope here that we can do. And it may be worth thinking about, we can apply for this now. Everything would come back to you no matter what. But there also, that's why I think that the question is there, is this the right time to apply for this grant? Because we do have a lot, and your strategic priorities, we've talked about bringing those back soon. And I think making sure this is aligned to those as well as the comp plan, multimodal plan, and all those things is a good thing too.
Yeah, who prepared the same?
I did.
Well done on linking it back to the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. I think you gave me that advice.
Yeah, I did. I sure did, and I appreciate the follow through.
Welcome.
More questions for Cass right now? And then Cass has questions for us as well. What direction does the board on page 245 of the packet? What direction does the board give staff regarding drafting of a full application for the local impact accelerator grant?
Do we need to go through public comment?
Oh, we sure do. Well, yes, we do.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and do that. Do you have any comments back there? Linda or Don? Folks online, any public comment on this application? Thank you, Nicole. Seeing none, we will go ahead and bring it back now, and we'll, time for discussion as well as these questions.
So a few thoughts. I love everything around the ADUs. A lot of my work right now is around ADUs that are happening across the United States. And there are some really innovative things that are happening that I think we have an opportunity to figure out for our mountain community. So I'm loving all of that, because what I've found out with affordable housing is that it does have to be a multi-pronged approach. You do have to look at impact fees. You do have to look at ADUs. You do have to look at, a fourplex apartment building. All of it has to be considered in order to get to the 112 or so units that we're short, right? I'm going to agree that an EV first procurement policy is sort of one of those things that can take a back seat if we were to pursue this. I just think about the priorities and what is screaming the most at us, and it's affordable housing and it's infrastructure and sidewalks. And I would say infrastructure sidewalks even takes a higher priority than a connected trail system, although that would be my third. So I would prioritize ADUs, and I would want, instead of putting 5 miles of trail and sidewalk access, I would be very specific and say we want to build ADA accessible sidewalks on First Street. Because that in of itself is going to be a lot of planning. It'll hopefully jumpstart developers in that area to move forward with some plans maybe. And it's hugely needed within our community. I would then prioritize maybe like that connected trail system between what would you say in the high school and
Old Town.
and Old Town. The secondary bridge, this is hard for me because it's a public safety piece. It's like usually number 1 on my list. But it would have to be written so that it could I would appreciate a plan that allows two-way traffic in addition to the bike and pedestrian walking paths, maybe on the sides. That is something that we have talked about in the past. And so I guess going in priority, it would be the secondary bridge, again, if we can make it a two-way, and then ADUs, and sidewalks on First Street. And then last would be the trail system from Old Town to the high school.
Thanks, Nicole. Other comments?
Nicole, do you feel like the First Street sidewalks like fits with the sustainability initiative? Because Cass, you were saying like, you know, one of the primary goals here is reducing carbon emissions. I think is that fit for you?
And for me, it's also the multimodal piece, the transportation, because right now we can't enable strollers or walkers down First Street. And that is
that's
eats me
definitely-
up
yeah.
every dang year we
Accessibility.
get denied a grant or something. So if this is a mechanism and a way that we can get that going, I would love to have that as a focus.
Actually completely second that list of priorities in that order. But the only thing that I would add is this idea of bus stop upgrades. That's something that the NEPADAC board has been talking about. And I wonder if it could be a team effort, if we had money from this to get to shovel-ready projects, and then we use the money from NEPADAC to actually do it, we can do double the number, which would be pretty incredible. So that's just something to think about, though I do think that sidewalks would probably still be a higher priority for me to the bus stop upgrades, just because we also have another team working on those bus stop upgrades. But it's just something to, I think about. My only other concern is, Cass, how do you feel about like, these are really disparate projects? And when you talked with the team there, was that something that they were like cool with, open to? It was like just part of the process is like, yeah, give us 10 totally different projects and we might fund all of them, none of them. Like, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. And I think because I've been like going to the webinars, talking to people for so long, I've kind of like figured it out and I feel comfortable with it. But I totally understand where you're coming from, because they gave us basically 4 categories. And then, so buildings, transportation, land use, and waste. And these are all areas in which you can reduce carbon emissions and areas in which align with their greenhouse gas reduction roadmap that the CEO has created. So their, I think, idea is we just want to tackle as many policies and projects as we can within these areas, even if the policy and the project that these municipalities who are applying, like if they don't necessarily support each other, as long as they're supporting our goal to reduce emissions. And so I think if they had suggested that we go with the constrained in the standard budget instead of the standard in the vision, then I would have been like, okay, they don't really want us to apply for as many transportation projects or something because we're not doing any policy in the transportation area. Yeah, it's kind of strange though, the way that it's set up. And I think the other thing is that they know that more municipalities want to do projects rather than policies, but CEO really wants to push the policy side of thing, which is why they're basically incentivizing us to do policy work and pass those things in order to unlock project funding. So it's kind of being used as an incentive, even if our project that we're applying for doesn't necessarily align with the policy.
And just actually real quick clarification, there isn't a requirement to have a policy and project connected. Okay, just,
Yep.
okay, just good.
Sorry, another clarifying thing. If we do have, these 5, like a policy or like 5 different projects proposed in like this one grant proposal, can they pick and choose which things to fund, or is it all or nothing?
I think that's kind of where the different budget tiers comes in. And yeah, so I don't think that they'll say we'll fund these aspects of your standard budget and not these. I think it'll be, we either will go forward with your standard or go forward with your vision. And that's why we can be a little bit more strategic in where we place different things. Like if you do want to consider the EV first procurement policy, but you don't want to prioritize that, then maybe put it in the vision budget, knowing that they might go for the standard budget. Just as an option,
Yeah.
not saying we should do that, just.
Go ahead.
Sorry, my only other thing with being strategic is I also want to use your time strategically with writing these proposals. So I just worry about having too many disparate projects. That's a lot. Like 5 totally disparate things is a lot of things to write about versus like 2 or 3 that we can really focus on and really provide a strong proposal for. I mean, you know better than I do your own time and what you can, like what amount of time and energy you can put into this, but that would just be something I want you to be aware of too.
Yeah.
Managing the grant side as well. That's the other thing is it's relatively easy to complete the project to write the grant. It's just the management part that is a challenge. And so that is something that I would recommend to you is to keep the scope within, because, it won't be necessarily CAS managing all these projects either. So they'll have to fit within our bigger scope of work.
So what if we were to give direction to focus on ADU and sidewalks?
And bridge.
Yeah, and just kind of be like,
1, 2, 3.
Let's kind of, keep it right there. Would that sort of line up with everybody's vision?
And Chris?
I mean, my thought is what Jonathan just kind of brought up was we're taking on a lot already. And if we were to get this, do we really have the capacity to do any of these projects? And should we maybe just try and focus, I would almost say, let's just focus on one thing. Let's just focus on the ADU First Street sidewalks. Let's try and scale it down, like get one project that we know we can do, that we can pursue and maybe get done, instead of trying to do too much, particularly with what else we're doing in town right now.
We're required to make those ADU changes by state law. And so it would be helpful to have
Yep.
funding available to that.
Right.
The other thing is the sidewalk project is something that could potentially be worked on in coordination with the DDA.
Yeah.
And this grant does have a match and we don't have it budgeted right now. So that is another thing is once we find out, and Cass has already talked to them about reducing our match, but that's something we need to continue working forward on. I think the bridge could be addressed through other ways, but right now we don't own property the bridge can go on. And I would be reluctant to recommend to you that you should pursue that project at this time for that reason.
The only caveat to that is we have known that that's been a known detail. And in the comprehensive plan, we identified 3 or 4 different sites of where it could go. And the idea was to then plan or at least, plan out for each of those different sites, what a potential bridge would look like and what it would cost and all those things.
I think what I would just caution is that involves private property owner coordination. And also the engineering for that is where the question would be, because it depends on, there's some site constraints for like that's what we're really looking at, is not a conceptual level design, but a more engineering level design. And so I think it depends on, I think that there's some challenges with that project, that it might be easier to, and you can make the recommendation that is the best in the direction and we can see what they say as well.
I guess that's part of my question is the engineering of those ideas that's potentially $2 million right there.
But unless we have a property identified for it to go on, engineering is wasted money.
No, we identified as a part of the comprehensive plan 3 or 4 sites.
Right, but we don't have any of the property.
Right, but it doesn't, you,
Oh, no.
but the question is, what's the chicken or the egg? You still would need to engineer, and part of the decision-making of selecting a site is part of potentially what the engineering costs would be.
Other comments on this?
I think overall, I'm hearing concerns about like our overall capacity
Yeah.
long-term. And so I would probably be in favor of limiting it down to the ADU and sidewalk projects.
Just within First Street, to clarify.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cass, do you feel like that gives us like a strong enough proposal? I mean, like I get we're like in a little bit of balance of like, we want a strong proposal. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew. Does that give us a good, like if we do the ADU stuff and just the sidewalk on First Street, does that give us enough or do we need to add something else?
I think if we did all the ADU policy and then we moved the ADU technical assistance to the standard budget, because the way that I'm thinking about this is that we would be applying with our like priority policy projects in the standard budget and then just kind of like putting everything else in the vision budget. And it, yeah, the two budget tiers is kind of strange way to apply. And I haven't applied for a grant that way, but I know that they are expecting us to apply with two tiers. So we do have to put like some of what we could consider doing in the vision budget. So I'm thinking that we move the ADU technical assistance into the standard budget. We change the transportation one to the sidewalks on First Street specifically, take the secondary bridge into the vision budget.
Yes.
And then have the EV, and then I guess I would like to know if you would want to include the EV policy and analysis at all, or just put those in the vision budget.
For me, it's a no. And the reason why is I think like part of the conversation is to get focused. And so if the standard budget is ADUs and sidewalks on First Street, I would agree with potentially a vision budget of adding the second bridge. But like that's up, for discussion because the visionary one is the 5 million, right? Right. So then at that point, we could potentially accommodate and have somebody like work to engineer those things. But at least from a standard perspective, we've got ADUs and sidewalks on First Street covered.
Okay.
Oh, is your mic on?
Oh, I think John just turned.
We're just messing with volumes over there. We kind of lost Luke, even though his mic's on.
Yeah. 6. Oh yeah, there we am. Check. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I would say, kind of in keeping more with the spirit of the grant of sustainability and I'd like to see the multi-use path to the school. I think that's a big one for me that fits with the intention of what we're trying of the grant. I'd like to see that one there in our primary
Standard.
yeah.
I'd like to see that too. And I also agree with the EV seems like too much for us to chew at all, so.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, another clarifying thing here. So we talked about maybe sidewalks on First Street, but then there's other, sidewalk capable streets downtown, such as, right along, Snyder's, garage. What is that? Snyder Street? Yeah. Yeah, Snyder. And potentially along Second Street as well, to actually have functioning sidewalks along those. So it could be that we potentially just write the grant to accommodate sidewalks. I don't know, you guys have to crunch the numbers and everything. To to see what that comes out to.
Yeah, it's not you.
This is Britt. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Brett. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Brett.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add from like a thinking from a competitive standpoint, I think that's a really good point, Nicole. I think we should make it a little bit more competitive and saying like more connecting than just limiting it to First Street. With that being the priority, but just to make sure we're still competitive and there are some options there. If we are able to pursue this grant, obviously in my head, you guys know I'm all on board with ADUs because I could use the help as I have many projects kind of going on with like state regulations that I have to get. So it'd be great to have someone look at it from a creative standpoint of what the town could do. But I definitely would love for this to still be competitive and hopefully we have a zero match. So just wanted to kind of to add that perspective of if I think we could word it a little bit differently and Cass and I can kind of work through those numbers so that hopefully it's a little bit more competitive and not just narrowing it down. I know there's a capacity standpoint, and the management will kind of be Cass, myself, John, and then you guys as we're moving forward with this. But I don't want to like restrict us too much where it's no longer competitive and we can kind of work those out. And ultimately, if we decided like we just can't do it, then that conversation could still be had based on the conversations we had with their team.
Thanks, Brett.
Another clarifying question.
Yeah, go.
Are you expecting to hear back before the deadline, 0% match?
No, I don't think they're gonna, I think if they would have told us beforehand, it would be when they issued the notice of encouragement.
Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, I agree on the standard ADUs and, the downtown sidewalks, and the old town to the high school. That's a real problem, safety problem.
And then I think just like my last kind of question is I will be bringing this to SAB and the PC. So if there's anything that you want them to kind of look at more closely, especially with like these sidewalks and I guess especially with the transportation projects and such, do you have any advice or recommendations?
I think you can present to them like what our sort of guiding direction is and what feedback they have, why we're deprioritizing the EV policy so that SAB has an understanding of that. They can provide feedback, and that's the direction I would provide.
Yeah, and just kind of giving them both the same presentation and because they'll digest it differently,
But probably give them the presentation of our recommendations.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Not what's in
Yeah,
this.
that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Like present the same, coming out of what we just decided, present the same content to them. That's what I meant to say. It was unclear, sorry.
No, it's okay. Okay, and then I think the only thing that I would like to go over, unless there's anything else you want to add, is just timeline. So this grant is due February 18th. There are 2 meetings before that date, the 3rd and the 17th. Would you prefer that I bring this to you February 3rd? It's kind of a tight turnaround, especially with, I wouldn't be meeting with SAB and PC until I'd be meeting with PC next week and SAB this week. And so I could draft the application as best as possible, bring it to you on the 3rd for discussion or action, or we can just do the 17th knowing that.
Right now, the 3rd's got a lot going on and the 17th is quite available, which might give you more time, but right now the 17th is got a lot more
Okay.
time, bandwidth, space. That's a better word.
Yeah. I feel confident that, just approve it. I mean, you have to turn in
Mhm.
like we
Luke's mic still doesn't sound to be working.
Oh, how about now?
Now I can
Sorry.
hear you.
If I,
We-
if I choose, I have to do the opposite of Nicole.
He has to chew on it, yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying, I feel confident that, with the amount of guidance and direction we've given that, even though it would have to be turned in the next day, we could approve it on the 17th.
And at that meeting, I would also be presenting a letter of support because it is required to be submitted with the full application. So just so you are aware.
A letter of support from the board.
Yes, sorry, a letter of support that would be signed, I think, by the mayor.
Okay.
But yeah, expressing your support.
Sounds good. I think the extra time might be helpful, hopefully, for you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation. John, I think it's your turn. We're going to talk about the West Wing, status of the West Wing right now.
Yes, so Mayor and Trustees, for the last several years, the west wing of the community center, which is just behind you over there on the kind of the left side of the room from where I'm sitting, has been used for storage and tenant space. When the community center was remodeled several years ago, there wasn't enough money to finish that section of the building. And so what happened is it was just kind of fell into that pattern where it was used for some tenant storage and then building storage. And over that time, Ned Fires kind of expressed that this situation is temporary and needs to change. Following the Caribou fire, we started looking at that space and thinking about specifically where could the Boulder County Sheriff's Office go. We have a contractual obligation to provide them with an office space, and we need to find somewhere that works for them. And several years ago now, they were actually located in the West Wing towards the end of the building there. And so as we kind of looked at it, we started thinking, hey, this could be a possibility. There's been some concerns over the years that it's not structurally sound, the West Wing. And so one of the questions we had is this building sound? And in that conversation, I started working with Ned Fire and the fire marshal, and then some local building folks to look at it and see if there was anything glaring that was gonna, preclude its use for something like that. And what we found is that there's really nothing. The building is generally sound, and it's about 12,000 square feet. I have 8,000 in my staff reporter, but it's actually closer to 12,000. But with that being said, that these deficiencies still exist, and most specifically, what they relate to is egress paths out of the building. The annunciation system, which is the fire alarm system, needs to be tied into the rest of the building. A sprinkler system should be installed in the wing there, and then there's some other things, like smaller things, just to make sure that it meets the needs of the fire code and the building code as they are today. We've been working really closely with Ned Fire on these findings, and I think what we also know is that the storage capacity of the building has exceeded what it should be for what it is. And so one of the things we need to do is clean the space out, and that needs to happen no matter what. In my staff report, I kind of give a progress update on where we're at. Last week, in my staff report, I apologize, I wrote it from last week's perspective. So earlier this week really means last week. The fire marshal met with community planner Britt Demink, and he also met with Don, who's here at the community center, and they walked through the space and started making a checklist of what needs to happen to bring it into a better state from that storage perspective. We've got a dumpster that should be here this week so that we can start cleaning out the space. We're going to be getting rid of a lot of the things that are in there right now. And there are different community organizations that have storage in there, and we've coordinated with them and started talking about what needs to happen in the short term and then the midterm and the long term. I think the goal is that we want folks to be able to keep their spaces, but we need to bring it to the level it needs to be at so that we're all kind of agreeing that the safe is being used the way it is intended. We've also been working on getting some quotes for that annunciation system and for the sprinkler system. There's other things that we could look at in the West Wing, like the bathrooms. There are restrooms there, which would be nice to have extra restrooms, HVAC systems, windows, all those kinds of things, egress doors. And so we're kind of looking at what it would take to rehab that space, seeing how it's a significant amount. It's 12,000 square feet, and we could use it for many different community purposes. BCSO, we could use it for tenant space, or maybe for additional things that could happen here at the community center. In my staff report, I think generally there's 3 paths forward here of what we could do next. The first one is that we could Well, in any option, we need to bring the storage load of the building down. So that needs to happen no matter what. In option one, what we could do is vacate the space completely and secure it. What we do in this option is we just make sure we have the storage load correct and get it to where Ned Fire is comfortable with the building being there. And then we could look at paths to either demo the building, replace it, or redevelop it at some point. I think it's important for me to note that while this has been something that has been talked about in the community for some time, we don't really have a budget for the demolition of the building. And it is, like I said, viable space in one of the more historic buildings in Nederland. Option two is some kind of limited compliance for constrained use, like a storage use. And in this case, we still need to go ahead and clean the building out, but we would address the minimum kind of number of life and fire safety deficiencies in the building to bring it to a minimum standard. So it could be used for kind of the storage use case it is being used for now. And then option three is just a full compliance and renovation project. That is what I recommended to you in my staff report. And in this case, what we would do is bring the West Wing into full compliance with fire and life safety codes so that it can function as like a long-term asset for the community. This would allow that space to be able to support public safety functions like the Boulder County Sheriff's Office, potentially expanded community center programming and other community aligned ideas. I think in this case, we've had a lot of conversations about what recreation looks like in Nederland and where those spaces could be. We had another one this evening about the rink, which is another recreational facility we have. And I think that if we were to save and renovate that wing, it doesn't preclude us from doing those other things that we've talked about. I also think an important point to mention is one aspect of this project that's come up over time is the road that goes into the main parking lot here at the community center. I think we know in wintertime, it's a really exciting ride at times. And that's something we should address. And I think that in talking to our engineers at JVA, we believe that there's paths forward that we can address the safety of that road and make it better long-term. And so that's something that I would say if we do go with that option three, that's something we're going to want to look at. I do think in that option as well, there's probably a phasing here that makes sense, where we come into compliance with what Ned Fire is looking for, and then we generally renovate the space. Maybe we're able to get the sheriff's office in there and the tenants that are operating there right now, and then continue working on the space over time. One thing that I have done last week is I talked to Chris LeMay, who's our DOLA regional representative. For those that don't know, DOLA is the Department of Local Affairs, and they help local communities in Colorado with funding and technical assistance and different kinds of compliance that we have to do. And they operate a grant I've told you guys about several times. It's the Energy and Mineral Impact Assistance Fund. And it's available for mining impacted communities. And the intention is to build community in those places, essentially to mitigate some of the impacts of mineral extraction. Chris told me that there is a round of DOLA funding that's open right now. There's $15 million available statewide, which is a fairly good pot for that fund. We're able to apply, there's two different classes of grant. So one is $200,000, one is $1 million, and we could apply for either one. When Senator Marchman was last year, I did ask her if we could qualify for an emergency reduction in our match requirement just because of the fire, and this is very fire related. And she said that that is a possibility. Chris also said that's a possibility. And typically what they do is they change it from a 1-to-1 match, meaning $1 million costs $1 million, to a 25% match, which is a lot better for us. I think that if we could apply for a grant like that, whether it's the 200,000 threshold or the bigger threshold, it would probably give us the money we need to get pretty far along in this renovation project. We just kind of had this confirmation from Chris last week, so I would need to put together the application and kind of the plan, and that would come back to you as official approval. But what I wanted to do is tell you there is a path forward where we could identify some additional funds to get to kind of this minimum level of life safety that we need to achieve for the building. So overall, what this update is intended to do is give you a discussion point to just, to start thinking about what this west wing of the building could be moving into the future, and to kind of identify some alternative uses that we could put there, such as the BCSO. And then also just to give you an update to tell you that we are trying to move quickly to address some of the immediate concerns that Ned Fire had related to the building. And that work is ongoing, but really just starting to pick up. And we intend to make substantial progress by the end of January and then continue that work until we've met the goal. If you have questions for me, I'm here and available to answer them.
Questions for John, since he's available?
I think I think this is super exciting. Couple of questions. Access to that wing currently is limited to right here. Is that correct?
Yeah, several of the classrooms over there have external egress on,
Right, I
on
mean,
the
yeah,
south.
from this,
Yeah.
from this part.
I-
That's the only way through is
Correct. I
either
think
outside or.
some of the tenants may have keys to that wing on the outside of the building, on
Right.
the other side of the building, but this is the primary point of access from the building.
And would part of the plan be to improve, like, make a new, access maybe through this hallway or something, or is that not really on the radar?
It's certainly a possibility. One of the things I think is, if we do this and we go with the DOLA money, I think one of the things we really want to do is have some spatial analysis done of this building and some engagement around the uses here.
Right.
This room in particular that we're in right now gets used heavily, and it is an impact on staff setting it up and breaking it down for all the different things we do. And it's great that we have the space, but having the space over here might be a really great way to kind of spread that out a little bit. There has been talk in the past of changing where the entrance to the building is, and that could be one of the things we do, or make an alternative entrance like you just stated. I think there used to be a door right here.
Yeah.
You can tell, and I think there's options, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. And is the parking lot, access road considered part of this? Like if you were going to do a grant to rehab the West Wing, would that include doing the parking lot work, or would that be separate?
I think it depends on the level of funding that we can realistically apply for, and that is in large part going to be dictated by the match that we have available. So one of the things I've been doing is trying to determine where and how we can generate match for this project. And I think there's a couple of irons in the fire that might help us. We've had some folks from different organizations reach out wanting to help with the fire. And if we could do that, that would be great. I also think it's worth just continuing to talk with our partners at the DDA and other organizations in town about maybe there's a way that we could make that work. Although this building is not in the DDA district,
Right.
so I think that's a bigger conversation.
And
But
would-
either way, I think it just depends on the funding we have.
And if we did get the full $1 million funding, would that be enough to do both?
I think it would be enough to get the planning for the road done, if nothing else. The other couple other projects I think are important here is to continue the maintenance work that's been done on the roof of this building. Back in when this whole project was precipitated, it was because the roof had collapsed. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again. And then there's a couple other maintenance projects that staff here has been focused on over time, just making sure that we maintain the facility. But I think in large part, it would be the $1 million should be sufficient to get a pretty good chunk of that work done. Especially when you consider we'd have at least 25% match. So it's actually would be like 1.25 or more that would be available. The other thing I'll note is that this is a reimbursement grant. And so we have to have the funds essentially dedicated at the time of application, but it could be something that over the 2 years that we have the grant that we can manage just through our budgetary process.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have to have funds available to spend and then be reimbursed for.
Yeah,
Is what you're saying.
dedicated funds, but they don't have to necessarily all be available.
Yeah.
We just have to dedicate our match. So
Got it.
that's the part that we just need to be careful about.
And I thought at one point, like part of the whole conversation of tearing down that part was of the West Wing was for like asbestos and everything. What's sort of the understanding of that now?
Yeah, there is some asbestos in the building. There's some heating ducts, old heating ducts that had asbestos around them.
Mhm.
That can be mitigated. There's a number of methods that can be used for that. There also may be some other materials in the building that contain asbestos, just given the period that this building was built,
Sure.
it's likely. And so one of the things that we've talked about with Ned Fire and is an adequate asbestos mitigation technique is to encapsulate it. And that can be done through paint or it can be done through drywalling. And then the HVAC system that had the asbestos is not going to be utilized. And so we can remove that. And if we did do a greater grant, that would be part of the project. And that would also involve like the testing required to make sure that the facility is safe for occupancy.
Well, it's still cheaper than demolishing,
Yeah.
demolishing and then rebuilding.
I will tell you, I'm a little biased. I have a relative who was involved in the construction of the building. And it would probably qualify as a historic building if we tried a locally designated one, at least, if not state designated.
Right.
It actually is a relatively beautiful building if we were to bring it back on the outside. So it could be a really good community asset. And I think that if we can find the funding for it, it would immediately address some of our space concerns we've had in town since the fire. One thing also that is needing to come up, and this was something you spoke about with Miranda before I got here, but town hall will eventually need to be remodeled. And by renovating this space, we could potentially move town hall here at least temporarily while we do that work, and then make sure that we continue to have a civic center here in the town.
Like that this could be a historic building makes me feel very old.
That's right. You went to school here,
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah.
In this building.
Well, in the West Wing, this part was here, but that part over there was not here.
Yeah.
Just this room.
So any more clarifying questions for the public comment? Public comment? Got folks in the room? And if not, folks online, any public comment on the west wing of the community center? Seeing or hearing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board on the very last page of this packet, page 264, our 5 requests for board direction. Continuing cleanup in coordination with that Ned Fire, which needs to happen regardless of long-term decisions. Sorry, make this bigger. Sorry. Continue obtaining cost and feasibility information for alarm, sprinkler, egress, and related compliance work. Continued coordination with Boulder County Sheriff's Office regarding space needs so feasibility can be incorporated into future options. Proceed with developing a DOLA Energy Impact Award proposal and evaluating other funding sources for board consideration, and confirm whether staff should pursue full compliance and renovation of the West Wing, with understanding that staff will return with detailed options, costs, and funding strategies before any authorization or decisions are made. Comments or thoughts?
Yeah, so we're obligated by contract to provide space to BCSO.
Correct.
Are there other spaces that have been looked at that are feasible?
Yes, but it would involve displacing other folks essentially, and that's something we could do, but it's not my preferred option. We have a lot of tenants who have been here for a long time, and I think what we're trying to do is build we want to maintain those relationships if possible, although that is another option if we are not able to complete this work.
What's the fire guy say?
Andrew, you should ask him what he says.
Yeah, I'll ask. Well, I mean, speaking personally, I think it's hard for us to have square footage, and we have square footage there in general. So not speaking with my fire hat on, but just a regular hat.
And
I think it's a
Nuggets hat.
Denver Nuggets hat. Yeah. I think I like the idea of reusing what we already have. I think that's something that stands with our pillars as a community.
Thank you.
I'd be open, definitely, obviously, for option 3. I mean, to renovate that, to bring it to historical, get it historically designated, I think would be a huge win. The money, the match is, a little bit of I hear what you're saying is if it's a 25%, great. And we can sort of work through that with regular budgeting process, but it would still have to be budgeted because it's not budgeted at this point. And so, when I look at strategic planning and the things that we've talked about, community center is always sort of one of those that's kind of like, we'll get to it kind of a thing. This might be a forcing mechanism for us to try to prioritize it. So.
For me, these are nods for all of these. My only input would be on the full renovation to really be thinking about what the expansion opportunities are. Whether it's 8 or 12, it's a good amount of space, but realistically, we probably need more. So, understanding how we can expand that space as we work on renovating it, that would be valuable. So that would be my direction.
Another thought, I may have asked you this on a one-off, but there's not like currently a community master plan or a master plan for this building.
I don't think there's one that we would call current.
Oh, sure.
I think that that's something that I would really like to do. I have my coffee talks, which are kind of informal, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool idea sessions? And I'd like to have one about this. And I think we probably want to continue engagement in a more formal sense about this building as well. Last year, Trustee Corvalon also had mentioned that it would be nice to think about what opportunities are available at this building. And I think over the last 12 months or so, we've really been thinking through operational capacity and the challenges we have facing this facility, and then also what the greater community is asking for in terms of programming and different kinds of events and things like that. And I think this is a really good opportunity to really, we have this space available. There's organizations in our community that were affected by the fire, like Tadasana and people in other organizations like that might be able to find a home in that space. Or maybe there's a space for an artist co-op, which has also been something that's been difficult to replace that was lost in the fire. And so I think being able to have those conversations and build that plan would be a really great goal for us to be thinking about.
Hey, Nicole, there is a community master center master plan. It was from about 8 years ago, I think was the last time we touched it. And it was predicated on the assumption we were destroying and knocking down the West Wing.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for that.
Now we're not. So, yay for
The other
us.
thing is if we could complete the clean out, that's the most critical need right now. And then we can come back to you very soon with some opportunities, and then you'll have some fiscal notes about what we're actually talking about and timelines and things like that. And that would be really the direction that would be helpful, is at that point, maybe that's when this evaluation of which option comes.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a nod on all of these requested board direction questions. And option 3 sounds like a good use of our time and the resources that we have and that we can continue to build upon in the community. So yeah, I think I agree with everything that people have shared.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I think we've been talking about this, John, for a bit, but yeah, the compliance and renovation option is, I think, a great option. I think it's cost effective and doable. And, coming from Idaho Springs, you saw that kind of stuff done there quite a bit. And they're just beautiful buildings to work with. And yeah, I agree with the 5, giving direction to go for it with those 5 steps on the last page. And I also like what Luke brought up about just, more square footage. And I know bringing this to the public for more ideas on what to do. Jim Navratil's talked a lot about, could there be some senior housing over there, and you've talked about, could there be a second floor? So, I mean, different ways to think about what the potential for that space to our right.
Well, and if there's any expansion conversations, you know, the first thing that's going to be asked,
I do.
where's the pool going?
Well,
Well,
like
then there's that.
that was my whole career before town management, so I think we could probably figure that out.
Yes, yes.
I
But
do
it-
want to really quickly just also really thank Net Fire. They've been really great partners to us and helped us figure out a path here. And that is really valuable to staff because it's kind of a big chunk to chew, but Net Fire has been here with us the whole time. So we really appreciate that.
I think the pool would be sweet right in this room. Centrally located. Well, thanks. What else do you need from us?
Nothing. Thank you all.
Appreciate it. So with that, we will go to, I believe it is. Any public comment on non-agenda items? Any public comment on non-agenda items? First in the room, anyone? Online? Any public comment on non-agenda items? Sorry, John's getting emails right now or something. I don't see anyone. Any other business? I'd say the rail jam was a pretty good success or the other day, last week.
I think
Or a
that's
week ago.
something, it was a great proof of concept of using that space again. And so I think we're going to keep working with folks to, just keep improving and making things great down there.
Yeah, it was really cold, but like a surprising turnout for how frigid it was. It was fun. Any other business? Random motions?
I move to adjourn. Sorry, hold on. Maybe John has something to add.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Sorry, I think Billy has other business.
I withdraw my motion.
I'm sorry.
Oh, do I? Remind me.
You went to a meeting with Peaks Peak Health and Human Services the other day.
Yes, and we talked a little bit about, thank you about that, for that. They had, we hadn't been part of that for a while, so we went back. They're talking about different, their budget for the year. They're trying to fund a, position, a part-time position, that's kind of contracted out. They had it in the past. They haven't had it for a while. They have asked us for some money, so that would be something we would talk about. We're not sure if that's something that's possible at this point, whether they're asking all the nonprofits and everyone involved for some money. So, but this position would be helpful for them for sure. So, I think that's all, without getting the details of the money.
It's an unbudgeted expense, and I think that what we probably should do is bring it back as a discussion item for you to consider how we might do that. But it's enough of an expense that I think we need to have just a little bit more talk about it.
Yeah. 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 They've been pushing on us from a few angles to contribute. So thanks, John.
And
Any other?
now
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Well done. Casey?
Mayor Billy,
Yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes, please.
trustee Corvalon,
She had left, by the way, at least an hour ago, about an hour ago,
okay, so around 8:50 PM.
after the bond ordinance. At some point, I didn't notice the time, but I just know she was gone.
All right. Trustee Jocelyn,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sterling.
Yes.
Trustee Maris.
Yes.
And trustee Larson.
Yes.
Thank you.
To be clear, she left when I went to get public comment or ask her a question on the CEO. She was gone. So I don't
The
know
meeting is adjourned at 9:50 PM.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Hope you feel better.